You've probably got one, right? A semiconductor. I mean, they're everywhere, right? In your smartphone, your car, probably even your toaster at this point.
Yeah, they're kind of unavoidable these days.
Totally. And the crazy thing is the U.S. industry for these little tech wonders, booming. At least that's what we're seeing in the latest census data. They track employment and shipments, and, well, the numbers are pretty wild.
It's interesting, right? It's kind of this manufacturing surge almost.
The numbers are kind of shocking, actually. So back in early 2020, you're looking at about 1,876 places actually making semiconductors. Jump ahead just a few years to early 2024, that number explodes to 2,545.
And what's wild is it kind of goes against what everyone says about automation, you know?
Right, because we're not just talking about more factories, it's more jobs, too. Good paying ones. From 2020 to early 2024, employment jumped from 185,370 workers to 202,029.
And the pay's going up too, like way up. The average salary in 2018 was $107,943.
Okay, not too shabby.
Right. But get this, just 3 years later, it's up to $116,254.
I mean, sign me up. But hold on, more jobs and higher pay. That's not usually how the automation story goes.
That's the thing. When you see how much they're spending on robotics, it gets even weirder. Like just between 2020 and 2022, spending on robotics in the industry went up by almost $1 billion.
So more robots and more jobs and everyone's getting paid more. Someone's got to explain this.
Right. It's like maybe automation is actually creating these higher skilled jobs that pay more. Maybe because the robots do the boring stuff, humans can do the more specialized stuff, you know?
So instead of taking jobs, they're kind of like making them better and making them pay more. Now that is interesting. Makes you wonder if it's happening in other industries too, right?
It really does.
It's like this weird opposite effect, right? Automation usually means less jobs, but here it's like it's pushing the whole industry up.
Yeah, it's kind of defying the narrative.
But it's not just happening on its own, is it? I mean, we've got to talk about the CHIP-ES Act, right? Everyone's been talking about that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, right?
That's the one. Big investment in U.S. semiconductor manufacturing, right? Billions of dollars.
Exactly. Trying to, like, revitalize the whole thing.
So what we're seeing now, this boom, this is like the early stages of that investment paying off.
It's looking that way, yeah. And the thing is, the data, all these crazy numbers we've been talking about, they only go up to early 2024.
So there's even more to come. I mean, the CHIPS Act still has a lot of time to do its thing.
Oh, for sure. And the data's going to get even more interesting. The Census Bureau's got more coming out soon.
Oh, really? Like what? Give me the good stuff.
Well, December 2024, they're dropping the geographic area statistics. That's from the 2022 economic census.
Okay, so what's that going to tell us?
It's going to break it down, show us where these jobs are popping up. Like, is it all clustered in one place or is it spread out?
So you get to see who's actually benefiting. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then summer 2025, we've got the 2023 annual integrated economic survey data coming out.
Okay, I feel another spreadsheet coming on. Hit me. What's in that one?
That one's like the nitty-gritty. Revenue, expenses, assets, the whole 9 yards. We'll see how the industry's finances are actually doing.
So it's like a before and after picture, right? We see what the CHIPS Act does over time.
Exactly. Not just the initial boom, but the long game. Like, is it sustainable?
I mean, this is already huge. This growth, the automation thing, and now the government's throwing money at it. It's like a perfect storm, but in a good way, you know?
Right. Like, who knows what's next? It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's almost like we can't get too carried away, you know? It's not all going to be smooth sailing.
It's a tricky thing because, yeah, we want a strong U.S. industry, but the whole world depends on these things, right?
Right. So, like, if we're making more here, maybe we don't need to rely on other countries as much, which sounds good.
Right. Sounds great, but then what? What if other countries start competing even harder? You know, trying to make even more semiconductors? It could cause a whole mess. You know, trade wars, shortages, who knows?
It's like we solve one problem, but maybe create a bunch of new ones. And that's just the beginning, right? What about, like, the planet? Making all these chips uses a lot of energy, a lot of resources.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Semiconductor manufacturing, not exactly known for being eco-friendly. And if we're going to be making more of these things, we better figure out a greener way to do it fast.
I mean, imagine if this whole industry went green, right? Less waste, less pollution, running on renewable energy, that kind of thing.
Right, they'd be huge.
It kind of reminds you there's always a bigger picture, even with something as cool as, like, a tech boom.
Totally. And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting to me, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking about chips, but it's really about so much more. It's about jobs. the environment, global politics, what it means to work in the future. It's wild.
It really is. Well, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today. The U.S. semiconductor industry is on fire right now, growing like crazy thanks to automation and these big investments from the government. But like we were saying, there's always another side of the story. What does it mean for the rest of the world? Are we screwing up the planet even more? And how do we make sure everyone benefits?
Big questions, for sure.
Huge. And that's why we do these deep dives. Gets you thinking, right? So next time you pick up your phone or whatever, take a second and think about those tiny little semiconductors inside. There's a whole lot going on in there, and we're just starting to figure it all out. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everybody.